Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, Karen told me to hang up, so I did. You want the plastic surgeon? If you insist. Pay for 20 hours of work, get 20 hours of work. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Karen told me to hang up, so I did. So I work for a large electronics company doing sales over the phone. We get a lot of calls daily and take credit card details to place orders, as well as place finance orders. Since fraud is such a big deal, our company were taught that only the account holder for the CC or finance account can place an order. Cue Karen calling to place an order for finance, go through everything, get her name/address/number, and payment details. Just before I place the order, she goes, "Oh, the card's in my dad's name, that's fine, right?" I tell her no, her dad needs to place the order as he's the account holder. We're arguing for about 5 minutes how she's his daughter and I need to finalize this order now. I tell her, I'm sorry, but I can't do that, as I've mentioned the account holder needs to place the order. She started cussing me out, calls me a stupid idiot and that I know nothing, and demands I place the order. I've had enough at this point. Since she started swearing and getting aggressive, I said I'm sorry, but if you continue to speak to me in such a manner, I will terminate this call. Customer says, well, terminate it then. So I did with a okay then, thank you for calling, have a nice day. I heard her go no wait as I hung up on her. That felt good. You want the plastic surgeon? If you insist. For context, this takes place at a large academic center in Canada where it is very common to have residents performing basic procedures. I once got a call as a senior resident from an emergency physician apologizing for consulting us for an irate woman with a small laceration on her hand, insisting that a plastic surgeon come to fix her right now. Of course, this was well within his scope of practice, but despite telling the patient this, she refused to allow just an emergency doc to fix wound. He explains the situation and I decide that this would be an excellent opportunity for malicious compliance as well as teaching my junior resident. So I tell him not to worry, I'll be down when we finish in a few hours. So I go down to see the patient with my junior, who just happens to be an off-service emergency resident. I examine the patient and explain to the now impatient woman that DRE junior resident would be fixing her hand. Keep in mind, by this point she has been waiting a few hours longer than she would have if she had let the emergency doc fix her. So ironically, instead of having her hand fixed by an emergency physician who has likely done thousands of these, she has it done by a junior emergency resident, who has done, like 2 or 3. And of course, I was there the entire time to ensure the resident did a satisfactory job, so it was more work for myself in the end, but I did enjoy the irony of the situation. Edit a few additional points addressing some of the negative comments. 1. Both our roles as junior and senior resident were disclosed to the patient. Nobody was pretending to be anything. 2. As stated initially, this is healthcare in Canada. It's free. Well, free. And it's built around the triaging of urgent over non-urgent. So no, you don't get to demand the staff plastic surgeon just because you want one, for something every emergency doc is well trained and practiced to do. 3. If you've been treated at an academic center, then I can guarantee you've been treated by residents. And I can also guarantee that your care was not inferior because of it. In many cases, it may have been better. Residents, in my experience, are way more careful and meticulous, especially for things like suturing. The key is ensuring they are well taught, and someone is there to look over their shoulder in case something goes wrong. Hence why nothing in my above example is in the least bit unethical or below standard. Pay for 20 hours of work, get 20 hours of work. This happened last year and I've been waiting months to share the inevitable fallout, so please enjoy this lengthy tale of corporate stupidity. I'll begin by saying I work for a software company. I was working on a project for a client to customize part of the software and stuff. The project was very open-ended, mostly because the client kept changing their mind about what they wanted, so the contract was time and materials. Meaning that I had an hourly rate, I would log all the time worked on the project, in half-hour intervals, and every week my company would bill the client company for the hours spent on the project. The client said they didn't care how much effort it took, they wanted a good product and they wanted it before the end of the year, so they could present it at their big internal meeting. At the beginning, the project went great. Every week I had a meeting with the client and I would get feedback on the progress, as well as new requests they might have, and then I'd spend however long it took to implement the changes. I'd bill them 15 hours, 20 hours, 25 hours, or however many it had been. Slowly, over time, the client started requesting more and more. I told them during the meeting this feature will require X days of work, changing that will require Y more days and so on, but again the client insisted they needed all those extra features. They also complained that the project wasn't advancing quickly enough, and insisted they needed the project completed before the end of the year. I talked to my manager and explained the situation. To be able to finish quickly enough, I needed to work full-time on this project. My manager moved my other projects to different people, and we told the client that until the end of the year I would work full-time on the project to ensure we will hit all the deadlines. The client was overjoyed, for about a month. The following month, the client is pissed and is demanding to know why we're charging them so much. I pull out my timesheets and explain that, as agreed, I've been working full-time and more on their project. Every week I've logged between 45 and 50 hours of work, and I have detailed notes specifying exactly how I've spent that time. I'm not particularly concerned about being accused of stealing time, because I'm a fast worker and most tasks have been completed more quickly than the original estimates. Besides, I point out that I'm now working twice as many hours as before, so it's costing the client twice as much per week, but I'm also completing tasks twice as quickly and will be finished in half the time. The client, unfortunately, doesn't appreciate my use of logical reasoning. They accuse my company of taking advantage and they say that starting from next week, they no longer want to pay for more than 20 hours of work per week. I tell them, sure, we can do that, but it's October already and you want the project completed by the end of the year. Given the amount of work still left to do, I will need more hours to finish. The client doesn't let me explain and says that we're not to bill them for anything more than 20 hours per week. They will not pay us for more than 20 hours per week, and they want this in writing or they'll cancel the entire project. And my manager says, of course, the customer is always right. This was an evil act of malicious compliance, so please read until the end before getting angry at my manager. He's a great guy. So my manager sends the client an email confirming that, starting from date, my engagement with them will be capped at a maximum of 20 hours per week. He also attaches a spreadsheet of the estimated time to develop all the new features of the project, how many hours I'd spent so far, and how many hours I projected to spend to complete it. The client smugly acknowledges this. Before the end of the week, my manager gives me back my other project, as well as a new one. You see, at the time we were understaffed because we were growing too quickly, and we were getting more requests for new projects that we could handle. So there would have been no point in stealing hours from this client and pissing them off, when we can take on a couple of new clients instead and bill everyone for the actual work and keep everyone happy. So, starting from next week, my new schedule is 20 hours with pissy client, 10 hours with client B and 15 hours with client C. It works great for me. It doesn't work that great for pissy client. At our next weekly meeting, one of the features they requested isn't ready yet. At the following meeting, I tell them we'll need to move the deadline for the next milestone by 2 weeks. Then it's the beginning of December, and they ask me if I would be able to make some last-minute changes and still deliver the project by the end of the year, and I say, oh, there is no way the project can be finished by the end of the year. We have yet another meeting with the client and my manager. My manager asks me why I'm missing this huge deadline. I say, do you remember when I was talking about all the work that still needed to be done and how long it would take? In October, we estimated the project needed another 60 days of work. I worked 10 days in October and 10 days in November, because you said 20 hours max per week. It's going to take about 40 more days of work to finish the project. It's December. Even if I work overtime, there are not 40 days left before the end of the year. Manager is like, yep, makes perfect sense. Client does the shocked Pikachu face. They act like this is the first they've heard about not being able to meet the deadlines, even though I've been telling them for weeks. Unfortunately, they are the kind of person who never listens to what they don't want to hear. At first they wanted the work done quickly, so they didn't think that if I worked more hours I would bill them for more hours. Then they wanted to be billed for fewer hours, so they didn't consider that I would work fewer hours on the project and things would get done much more slowly. Unfortunately for the client, who would like to pretend that we were springing this on them at the last minute, we had tons of emails to show we had told them well in advance. My manager's email back in October had even included an estimate of when the project would be completed based on number of hours worked per week. Our ass was well and truly covered. Now, as for the fallback. The client kicked and screamed and demanded that I go back to work on their project full-time, or even that my company should provide a second person to help me meet the deadline at the end of the year. It's January and the project is still unfinished, so you can guess how well that went. Client had to move the big presentation of the new software and was not happy about it, and about having to explain it all to their own CEO, but we told them very nicely in corporate tones to pound sand. I was already scheduled to work on 2 other projects for the next few months, and it had been hard enough to put me full-time on this project the first time. My manager is not going to leave another 2 clients hanging, especially not to please this pissy client who keeps changing their mind and threatens to cancel their contract every other week. As a company, we do our best to keep the client happy, but there is a limit to everything, especially when someone goes out of their way to not listen when we try to explain how cause and effect works. ETA, thanks for the awards and kind comments. They're cheering me up, as pissy client has just received the total hours I worked in January and takes issue with how long each task is taking. Because of course. To clarify a mistaken assumption I've seen, both me and pissy client are women. Unfortunately, she is our only point of contact with the client company. I'm hoping she will not renew the contract, but I'm afraid she needs us and our sales team wants the money. The new contract is being negotiated right now and hopefully it will have conditions that prevent a repeat of this shitshow. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.